Vinod Sethi, who's former MD Morgan Stanley Asset Management, in our continuing coverage of Infi turning 25 on the bosses. Remember, it's been an incredible journey. Just a few moments back, we got you the first person who sold the Infi story to the world, which was Mr. Vallabh Bhansali, who managed the Infi IPO way back in 1993. And now we get you the person who is perhaps the first prominent buyer into the business 25 years back. Vinod Sethi, like I said, joins in. He was the first largest institutional investor in the stock, about 13% of Infosys. So, Vinod, great to have you on the show. Thanks very much for joining us on this momentous day. You came on board as the first institutional investor, like I pointed out, and Infosys after it went public with a near 13% stake. What gave you the conviction to invest in an issue which was largely unsubscribed? You know, it didn't get the fancy takeoff that perhaps one was expecting, and had to be rescued by its bankers. What made you buy the stock at that time then?
It was I would say a different era, and Infosys came out at a time when the sentiment for asset-light companies, if you will, wasn't very wasn't high, and the issue actually had devolved. So we took a significant stake in the development, essentially because I mean, I was of a different view. I mean, in the 90s, the view was that that companies like, say, Infosys, which are, you know, employee heavy and asset light, or say HDFC, which, you know, is sitting on rented premises with employees and nothing else, or if you take Z Television, which had come out. I mean, we took a significant stake in all of them. And essentially, our bet was very simple, that you bet on human beings, creativity, and financial efficiency, and this sort of heavy capital replacement cost thesis and so on that pervaded the atmosphere then was not the way to go. It was really capital efficiency, and it was, I think, brutally obvious in the case of something like Infosys that capital efficiency would be good, because essentially you know, you're getting an engineer for 50,000 rupees who you'll hopefully place at $50,000, and so it didn't require rocket science to figure it out.
It sure did. But Vinod, would you say that this was an IPO that redefined capital markets in the country? I mean, it democratized wealth creation, set new benchmarks for governance?
Well, yes and no. I think capital markets are, it certainly is yes, for the simple reason that, you know, it's obvious. I mean, you know, you've created a fabulous company out of nothing, which is, you know, worth tens of billions of dollars. But that is also the nature of capitalism. So I wouldn't say that this is the only case. As India opens up, you will have waves of companies of this kind coming up. So you, for instance, you had Google come from nowhere. You had Apple, which was trading at less than $1, come from nowhere and going to almost $1 trillion in market cap. So this is a phenomena that will ebb and flow. That's the nature of capitalism. Indices, every decade, indices sort of change almost 70%. It's true in India also. It's true also in for the Dow and for the Nasdaq. So this is part of a process. I think you can say that Infosys was a precursor or sort of the pioneering wave in that process after India opened up in the early 90s. So yes, it is sort of leading the way. Will it be the first and the last? Certainly not.
Certainly not, definitely. In a sense, Morgan Stanley opened the door to a string of institutional investors in the company. Infosys today is still majority owned by institutional investors. Was it because of their disclosure standards, the fact that they provided guidance that attracted investors? Is that what's really the bait that continues to keep the conviction going with the business today?
I think all the reasons you said are yes. There was articulation, there was communication, there was management depth, there was Nandan, there were many others below, and there was a conscious desire on the part of the company to reach out to investors. So it was a conscious decision, and it was also business. I think foreigners found it easy to understand. And I remember when I think we perhaps did one of the first sort of institutional roadshows in India, maybe early 90s, and we had large institutions here. One of the companies, I think we had it in Bangalore or Chennai, I forget. And Mr. Narayan Murthy and his team actually flew in there and gave a whole presentation. He needed no convincing to do that. We just made a request and he agreed. So they've been forthcoming. So it requires two hands to clap, and in that sense, their openness, transparency certainly helped.
Okay, Vinod, so would you say that it's still an iconic company in the light of the recent challenges that it's been seeing in the last few years? I mean, there have been multiple challenges at the board, at the management level, but is the integrity still intact according to you?
It is. It certainly is an iconic company. It is a homegrown giant, which has provided jobs to hundreds of thousands of people. So I wouldn't question his iconic status. I think it's a huge contribution to expanding the mind of businesses in India. So I think those are grand contributions. Now you got to separate those contributions from business cycles and waves and businesses maturing and changes in various industries, industry structures, and all of that. So that I will stay out of. That is a constant process. I think each industry will suffer, from waves of, a lot of success, changes like artificial intelligence, automation, all sorts of things. So I think while it grows and has done very well and is an iconic company, it certainly has challenges. And it's in the technology sphere where I think challenge every 5 years is a given. So how they deal with it is what will determine its road ahead.
But how would you look at the IT space and Infosys today if you had to reprise your role as a large institutional investor?
I have a bias. Let me admit what the bias is. The bias is that I seek out situations which are forgotten, which people don't see, and I sort of stay away from situations which are well in the public domain and well researched and well established. So I don't have a cutting edge opinion on companies which are extremely widely known. That's not my forte. So I wouldn't pass any major judgment either way. But yes, I think a lot should happen in technology. Hopefully India also enters a phase where we replicate some of the big product successes of the US, some out of China, and I don't see why that will not happen. So my sort of interest is in those sort of fringes of technology where India comes out with hopefully product leaders over time.
Right. Lastly, Vinod, should there have been more Infosys in the last 2 decades in India in terms of how it led to wealth creation, or will we see that happening now with a flourishing startup ecosystem?
No, I think I'm incredibly bullish. I have the exact opposite view. I think India is democratized in a different way. We've now moved away from the English elite, which a Doon school elite, if you will. This is sort of the age of Dhoni. This is the age of sort of Vishal Bhardwaj. This is the age of a small town boy or a girl from India with all the talent, which now has the ability to reach out to, has access to knowledge, has access to YouTube, has access to courses, all of that. So I think the whole opportunity set in India has exploded, where you had a narrow elite at various portals of power and in industry. So, for instance, where does Patanjali come from? You know, in an industry which is dominated by IIM Ahmedabad type people, you know, who worked at Hindustan Lever and so on and so forth. So I think you will. This is what I call the age of Dhoni, a small town boy from Ranchi who's a legend in cricket. He hasn't gone to the fanciest cricket academy. He doesn't, you know, he hasn't gone to the fanciest schools and so on and so forth. So I think these examples, I think you will have have explosions coming from the smallest towns and smallest villages of India. There is talent. So I think one needs to watch out. Next 20, 30 years, I think will be very eventful.
Vinod, thanks very much for joining us.